This is it, y'all, the final chapter of the Moment versus Sandmarc battle. If you haven't seen my previous video yet, highly recommend starting there, soaking up all the case, accessories, and lens comparison glory, and then coming back to this one. I promised a telephoto head-to-head when the 58mm from Moment came in, and it's finally here. That and a pretty big surprise at the end, so it's worth sticking around. 3 telephoto lenses, the Moment V1 60mm, the Moment V2 58mm, and the Sandmarc 60mm. The first battle, Moment versus Moment, 58mm versus 60mm, is the new and improved telephoto truly new and improved? Remember from my last video, the 60mm was a mild train wreck. The vignetting just made it completely unusable for photography on the iPhone XS's wide-angle lens. Looking at nothing but the diameter versus the old lens, I'd guess before even using it that the vignetting issue will likely be resolved, and sure enough, that's exactly the case. Shooting on the iPhone's wide-angle sensor using the Lightroom app to resolve the issues with Apple's stock camera app that I talked about in that first video, immediately we can see that all the vignetting issues are gone. And it's, as we'd expect, a slightly wider lens. Now looking across the entire photo and even jumping in towards the middle of the photo, the 60mm had some serious softness issues as well that you can see here that are largely fixed in the 58mm. Hands down, the new 58mm is a much sharper lens across the entire photo, and we can really see that when we look at the corners and the edges. What I didn't expect though, there are some huge improvements in chromatic aberration. Looking at the differences here, the yellow cast is almost completely gone with the 58mm and may have a very slight red aberration, but it is so subtle. Throwing both lenses on the iPhone's telephoto sensor, we see the same traits holding strong, which makes sense. The differences are dependent on the glass, not on the phone sensor. Chromatic aberration is greatly reduced, and the image on the whole, of course, is sharper. An awesome yet completely unexpected perk too can be seen in the branches in the building. While the new lens is slightly wider, it's producing a shallower depth of field to create that nice background blur. And you may be asking, how's this differing from softness? Are you sure this isn't softness? Well, looking at my beautiful brick pick, we see drastically improved overall sharpness edge to edge. Both the corners and the center are definitely sharper on the V2 lens, verifying that this is indeed depth of field and not softness. Easy verdict, don't buy the 60mm ever, just go straight for the 58. Oh boy. We now know that if you're going Moment, the V2 is unequivocally the way to go, but how does it stand up against Sandmarc? They more than held their own against Moment with their other lenses. Can the telephoto hold strong as well? Standing a little taller, a little wider, and featuring a wider aperture, the Sandmarc is overall a larger lens than the Moment, but based on the build materials, Moment is coming in a little bit heavier. This is definitely a tighter comparison than the last one. Looking first at sharpness, the center of both photos are just about as comparable as they can be. I couldn't tell you which is which if this was all I had to go by, but if we jump over to the corners of the photo, Moment takes a very obvious lead with an overall sharper image. I'm honestly pretty blown away at how sharp it is all the way to the corners, and there's really no signs of distortion either. Looking at chromatic aberration, along the top of the gutter here, we see more yellow aberration from Sandmarc as well as down the post. The gutter aberration is really not present at all with Moment. It's slightly less present along the post, but we see a new small red aberration along the bottom of the gutter. It is overall less pronounced with Moment though, and so Moment is going to take the win on this photo, although it is a much closer battle than the sharpness battle where Moment is clearly taking the lead. Well, in the middle of shooting, the Carmel police showed up, still trying to work out what this pose is exactly.
Blocking out the haters.
First things first, look how much better either lens on Apple's wide sensor looks versus Apple's telephoto sensor by itself. All that aberration in the trees is just nasty. Sandmarc does away with this almost completely. Those branches are clean. Where Moment still looks far better than Apple's telephoto, Sandmarc's winning the aberration battle for this photo. This one gets strange though looking at sharpness. Pushing to the edges, Moment is absolutely sharper and less distorted. His keychain clearly shows this, and so do the bricks in the other corner. But this is interesting. Look at the grass behind him. This isn't softness in the Moment lens. In fact, it's depth of field again. For whatever reason, the Moment lens is producing a shallower depth of field despite being a slightly wider lens. I took the photo a few times just to verify that this wasn't some sort of weird focus hiccup within Lightroom, and sure enough, same result every time. This is certainly a desired trait for telephoto lenses, so I am going to give Moment a slight bump for depth of field of view depth.
Depth of field!
The good old brick picture tells the same sharpness and distortion story. You can actually see a region in which Sandmarc is sharp, where Moment is holding on all the way up to the edges, and I'm seeing no signs of vignetting in either. This was a strange battle for chromatic aberration with wins on both sides, but edge to edge sharpness, depth of field, and less distortion give Moment the final edge, Moment's going to win the telephoto battle. Two more notes. First, an elaboration on depth of field. Both lenses will allow you to pull a nice blur in the background like you would expect from a telephoto lens, but the minimum focus distance is going to be further back than the Apple wide-angle camera by itself. At roughly the same object framing, you'll pull more background blur with either external lens than you will with the standalone wide-angle camera on the iPhone, as you would expect. But putting either lens on the wide-angle camera and comparing to the built-in telephoto camera, you're much better off using an external lens. It pulls a much nicer background blur, and the image will be cleaner in low light because of the wider f1.8 aperture versus the f2.4 on the telephoto. That got a bit wordy. Hopefully you survived. If you want to shoot telephoto, use a lens. Last, there's one more piece to the accessory battle that I didn't mention in the previous video. Both Moment and Sandmarc offer filter compatibility across their line of lenses. Moment's made all their lenses compatible with 62mm filters via a $40 adapter kit, where Sandmarc's wide and telephoto lenses are compatible with their own in-house polarizers and ND filters via a built-in threaded connection. With Sandmarc, you're getting a set that includes both, where with Moment, you're probably going to want to hunt around on Amazon for some cheaper options than what they're offering on their website. I'll throw some in the description below if you're interested. Go ahead and throw this into the equation when you're deciding which ecosystem you want to invest in. Take some photos, tag me in on my Instagram. I'd love to see what you guys are shooting. All right, y'all. The big surprise, if you stuck around this long, you're gonna be glad you did. I am finally doing my 10,000 subscriber giveaway. I know, exciting, right? I am going to be giving away this same Moment case and a lens of your choice. To win it, 3 small steps. First, hit that subscribe button. Second, hit the notification bell. And third, leave a comment below letting me know your own cool ideas for videos you'd like to see me produce in the future. That's it, y'all. Around 15,000 views, I'll use a randomizer to choose a winner. Anyways, thanks again, y'all, for watching and helping making my YouTube goals a reality. If the video was helpful, give it a big thumbs up. If it was very helpful, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.